Dr. Mindy here, and on this video, I'm going to answer the million-dollar question: how do you know if a food or a drink takes you out of a fasted state? Fasted state. So I really want to try to keep this simple so that you can take this information and run with it and know exactly what you can have in your fasting window and in your eating window. Here's how this looks. So I love this little guy, this little teeter-totter guy, because this is really what it's like. You are going from sugar burner to fat burner. You're always moving back and forth between these two states. When you eat, you go to sugar burner, and all of a sudden your body is getting energy from glucose. That is the scientific name for sugar that you get from eating any kind of food. Blood sugar goes up, you become a sugar burner. Now, about 8 hours after the last food you put into your mouth, you are going to start to go over to the other energy burning system called your fat burner energy system, or we like to call it the ketogenic energy system. And so once you're over there, you will stay in that energy system until you raise your blood sugar again. So it takes about 8 hours from the moment that you had that last food in your mouth. And then, as you know, and I've taught you all here, is once you get to about 13 hours, 15 hours, 17, 24, 36, 48, 72, the longer you go in this fasted state, the more healing will happen. So how long you stay in that fasted state is up to you. What's really important, and why I wanted to do this video for you, is sometimes we inadvertently pull ourselves out of the fasted state and we don't even realize it. You can do that with coffee, you can do it with tea. I've even seen a glass of water pull somebody out of a fasted state. Very, very sick person, but let me explain why that happens and what you can do to be able to eat some things and drink some things that will keep you in this fasted state. So here we go. There are two things that control your blood sugar. So if these two things are balanced and you eat a very clean meal that isn't really high in refined carbohydrates and refined sugars, you will move to your fat burning system much quicker. If these two things are really out of balance, even though you are not eating, even though you are bringing that blood sugar down, you may take you longer to get over to the fat burning place. So here are the two things. One, your microbiome. If you have been on antibiotics, if you've been women that have been on birth control for decades, if you've had a lot of stress, if you have been eating the typical Western diet that's really high in inflammatory fats, high in sugars and chemicals, you no doubt have destroyed your microbiome. You have good bacteria in this microbiome in your gut, and you have bad bacteria. So when the bad is allowed to thrive, it is actually makes it more difficult for your blood sugar to come down. One of the key things that regulates your blood sugar are these microbes in your gut. So it's not always up to the human cells to regulate this. It's up to these microbes. They have a big part in this. So if you've been under all this stress, if there's been a ton of damage to your microbiome, it may take you a lot longer to get over to that fat burning place. So be patient. I'm going to talk about how you can fix that microbiome really quickly. Second thing, if you are insulin resistant, it will be more difficult for you to move into that fasted state. Now, here's what's really important, and what I want you to understand is that when a cell is insulin resistant, it's like it's hyper-reactive. So anything that comes into your body, it's going to have this insulin and glucose response. This woman I talked about who kicked her out of a fasted state, that she actually elevated her blood sugar from a glass of water, that happened because she was so insulin resistant and her microbiome was destroyed. So if those two things are good, when you stop eating, you're going to be able to go over into this fasted state much quicker. Okay, well, how do you know if you're insulin resistant? Well, this is the tricky part, is that you don't have to have a diagnosis of diabetes to be insulin resistant. If you're struggling to lose weight, if you're pre-diabetic, if you have any fatty liver disease, any cardiovascular problems, metabolic syndrome, these are signs you're insulin resistant. Go look at your blood work. Hemoglobin A1C, if it's above 5, you are insulin resistant. Fasting glucose, when you get up in the morning, if it's not under at least 100, I'm going to just say 100, 90 would be great, then you are most likely insulin resistant. So I tell you that as a foundation to say moving from this sugar burner to fat burner will become a little slower for the person who's insulin resistant and has a microbiome that has been destroyed. Now, what does this have to do with like a cup of coffee, which is what you all typically ask me, is coffee, tea, how does that affect my fasted state? Will it kick me back into sugar burner? Well, if you're insulin resistant and your microbiome is destroyed, it might. That is a possibility. But if you have been applying these principles for a while, you know you're not insulin resistant, you've been fasting for a while, you've been adding the 3 Ps in that I talk about that repairs the microbiome, then a cup of coffee in your fasted state may be okay. Same thing with tea. You might be okay. One person who has a really good microbiome and is insulin sensitive, they could drink almost anything except maybe juice in their fasting window and it's not going to elevate their blood sugar. If those two systems are destroyed, it doesn't matter what you drink, your blood sugar is going to go up and you're going to go back into the sugar burner state. So there is a test. I tell you all this, so it's bio-individual. I can't just sit here and say there's a one-size-fits-all for everybody. But what I want you to realize is if you have a cup of coffee and you're like, I want it, I got to drink it in my fasting window, but it's spiking my blood sugar, then keep fasting and keep doing the longer fasts like I encourage you guys to do, and you will kick yourself out of insulin resistance. Make sure you're not eating the refined carbohydrates and the bad oils. That contributes to insulin resistance. And then keep working on your microbiome. The beautiful thing about fasting is the more you fast, the more microbiome repair happens. So just stay with the principles that I've been teaching you here, and the more you fast, the more you eat good food, that microbiome will change and you will be able to have that cup of coffee in your fasting window. The microbiome can change in as little as 3 days. Insulin sensitivity probably takes about a couple of weeks to a month, given the principles that I'm teaching here. So it's that simple, but what I want you all to realize is that's individual to you. So when you want to know if you can drink something in a fasting window, think about your microbiome and think about insulin resistance. Okay, check this out. I have a free fasting guide for you all. It's free. And it's going to teach you all the basics of fasting. It's going to teach you how to kill hunger when you fast, which is really cool. And it's going to show you how to break your fast, among many other things. All you got to do is click on this link right here and enjoy. Okay, you guys have asked this over and over and over again. Every Q&A, thousands of emails. How do I know if this food, this drink takes me out of a fasted state? I'm going to make it simple. Okay, let's start with this. What is a fasted state? So a fasted state is when your blood sugar starts to go down and it signals to the body to switch from a sugar burner to a fat burner. We call that metabolic switching. And when you're in a fat burning state, you'll know because your body will make ketones. I think of this switch very much like a hybrid car. So when you start off, years ago, my daughter had a hybrid car, and you start off in electric, and when you go fast enough, you go into gas. A little bit different in the sense that you start off in this sugar burner state. When the blood sugar goes down for a significant period of time, then you'll switch over into fat burning, okay? Now that time period typically is somewhere between 13 to 15 hours. If you're like, well, I've been fasting for a while and when I go 15 hours, I don't make ketones, know that we just got to stick with it. And the more you fast, the more variation you do, the more you work on your food, easier the switch will be, okay? So when we talk about did something pull me out of a fasted state, what we are asking, or what you are asking, is did it switch me back to sugar burner? That's the key here. So how would you know you went back to sugar burner? And it's super easy, okay? You're gonna need to measure your blood, by the way, and this doesn't mean go to the doctor. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but here's the magic formula. You're gonna take a blood sugar reading with a little home meter. I like Keto Mojo. I love the company, I love the strips, I love the whole tool. So if you don't have a Keto Mojo, you wanna know how to order one, just put Keto Mojo in the comments and my team will send you a link for that. So you can get a Keto Mojo. You can also get a CGM. A CGM is a continuous glucose monitor. I think we would end insulin resistance if we slapped a CGM on every single human, because what it is doing is continuously measuring your blood sugar to see, so you can see what different foods and drinks are doing as far as spiking your blood sugar. So if you want to know my favorite CGM, how you order one, just put CGM in your comments. So you're going to take a reading, a blood sugar reading, not a ketone reading, a blood sugar reading. Then you are going to drink the drink, you're going to eat the food, you're going to do whatever the thing in question is, and then half an hour later, you're going to take another blood sugar reading. We want those two, ideally, those two readings to be very equal. Maybe a point or two difference would be like not the end of the world, but here's the formula. If this second reading is 10 points or higher, you're out of a fasted state. So it doesn't matter if it's coffee, doesn't matter if it's mineral water. A lot of you guys ask us about Diet Coke. NutraSweet will often pull you out of a fasted state. So let's say you took a reading, you drank a Diet Coke. You're like, I'm not eating anything. I'm just gonna have a Diet Coke. And then you half an hour later take another reading and it's 11 points higher than that first reading, you are out of a fasted state. Now, let's say your coffee, you want to know about your coffee. You take a reading, drink your cup of coffee, and then half hour later, let's say it only rose like a point or two. You're still in a fasted state. What if that second reading went down? That's even better. That means that it's accelerating your fasting state. So that is the magic formula. It doesn't matter if it's gum, doesn't matter if it's medication, supplements, drinks, food. You guys have asked us everything. That formula is how you will know. You could do it with a supplement. Take a reading, take the supplement, half hour later. You can test everything, which is why I love a CGM, because it's a great tool to really start to see what is working and not working for you with your fasting habits. Now, last couple things I want to point out. Not all food is the same. So carbohydrates typically pull you out of a fasted state. Protein, not everybody, some of you it'll pull you out of fasted, some of you won't. I know that recently I wore a CGM and whenever I ate protein, it actually brought my blood sugar down. I was like, this is cool. So I now know that protein's a good thing that actually keeps me in somewhat of a fasted state. It's pretty profound. That blew my own mind. And then fat is the thing that typically will stabilize your blood sugar. So a lot of you are doing the fat in your coffee in the morning. I know in the interview I did with Dave Asprey on the Resetter podcast, he strongly believes that MCT oil is a phenomenal way to actually put you in a fasted state. He loves it for beginning fasters. So just test it because it may work for Dave and it may not work for you. But he really had some good logic that MCT oil specifically can actually accelerate getting you into a fasted state. But that's the formula, you guys. It's hard to do without a blood sugar reader. You gotta have that to know for sure. But everybody's different. We all have different bacteria that are balancing these blood sugar levels. So just because an expert like Dave gets up and says MCT oil will put you into a deeper fast, doesn't mean that works for everybody. We've got to start looking at this information and doing what I call self-science and figuring out what works best for us, which is why this formula is great. I know you're struggling to lose weight. It may be your fasting length. So in this video, I'm going to show you the perfect fasting length to unstick weight loss. In fact, it's such an incredible tool for weight loss. I think you should start with fasting before you change your food to be able to get into that door in for losing weight.